My grandmother died in 2017 from cancer. She had 3 children, my dad, my Aunt Marie, and another named Katie. Her husband had 4 children from a previous marriage. Due to distance from her home, Marie and my dad could not be there while Grandma was getting care. Katie did the work, but it was found she had been neglecting her mother. Grandma died, and before she did, she said now Katie can get whatever she wants from Alan, her husband. Alan has no kids with Grandma, however he raised us all as his own kids and grandkids. Sure enough, once Grandma was gone, Alan moved in with Katie. She started monitoring his phone calls, and subsequently telling family he wanted no contact. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and both leukemia and lymphoma, bladder and prostate cancer from being exposed to contaminated water during his service to the Marines at Camp Lejeune. His own children were denied access, and when his son forced visitation by popping in unannounced, his visits with his father were always supervised. Last week while on hospice, Katie brought her grandkids over with COVID-19. She admitted as much when confronted about him contracting COVID. Now Grandpa Alan is dying. Katie didn't even tell his children he had failed to wake up for 2 days. When his son called to check on his father, he was told he was just sleeping and was doing fine. And now we found out sometime while sick he signed over all of his assets to Katie. I have no desire for anything my grandparents had. My parents, Aunt Marie, and cousins all feel the same about it. I don't want this woman to get away with this. Almost 6 years of isolating him, we haven't seen him since. Elderly abuse, financial gains and abuses, and now killing him with COVID. Is there any recourse his kids can take against her? He's dying and they just found out. It's a lot for them to handle. But is this woman going to get away with this? Can a stepdaughter do this legally? Isn't knowingly exposing him to COVID when immune-compromised murder? My aunt is murdering my grandpa. Please help me somehow. Update: my grandpa just passed away about 29 minutes ago. We got the text. Back in 1999, in Bountiful, Utah, at a now-defunct gym, Lawrence's 0900 ab class was a special thing. People stood in line for it. You weren't guaranteed to get in, because there were only 30 spots available, but if you did get in, it was money. The class was awesome. People swore their abs looked tighter after only 1 hour, but that's not why most people went. Most went because it was the cool thing. Also, because of Lawrence the instructor. Picture a guy from the East Coast, confident and fast-talking with perfectly chiseled abs and muscles. He was all charisma and charm. Didn't hurt that he'd often teach the class with his shirt off while he walked around correcting form in a very 90s, hands-on fashion. The chicks dug it, I did too, and he had them lined up literally. That line though, mostly 30-something, gorgeous moms with huge hair, perfect makeup, new boobs, and only the latest fashions. If you were ever in Bountiful, Utah during that time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Speaking of which, both Tetonia and Hairzilla came 20 minutes early. They dropped their bags on the line to hold their place, then went over to the treadmills/bikes to sneak some extra calorie-burning cardio before class. Tetonia was already there riding the bikes with her friends when Hairzilla jumped on the treadmill behind her. Tetonia was the it girl. She and all her friends were giggling and laughing while they caught up every morning. Hairzilla was a beautiful loner. The next image I have etched in my memory was of Hairzilla, for some reason, jumping off her treadmill and aggressively storming to the front desk, grabbing the TV remote, no smartphones back then back to her treadmill and changing the channel on the TV that all the popular chicks were already watching. There was an audible bagok, From the hen house. Oh, the horror, the disrespect. It is common knowledge you must get collective permission from everyone in the room before you change the channel. Hairzilla didn't. Tetonia wasn't having it. As the self-appointed leader of the now disrespected brood, she jumped to her feet, spun around, swiped the remote from Hairzilla's treadmill and changed the channel back. She then huffed the remote triumphantly back to the front desk, handed it in and stormed back to her bike to the thunderous applause of her posse. In the ruckus, I'd lost track of Hairzilla. Her treadmill was empty, so I guessed she probably slunk off into a dark corner to lick her wounds. Nope, by the time I located her she was already on her way back from the front desk, remote in hand, ready to change it back. Which she did. With a humph. Tetonia objected loudly. Hairzilla acted like she didn't hear it. Tetonia jumped up on the front of the treadmill, reached her arm out, demanding the remote back. Hairzilla didn't look at her. Tetonia swiped at the remote with her hand. She was quick. She got a hold of it. Now they were fighting over it physically. Hairzilla pushed Tetonia's arm away, scratching her. Tetonia let out a shriek, grasping her elbow in pain, and began running, seemingly away. That's right, I said seemingly. Next thing I saw was Tetonia in full charge. She had run down around the end of the treadmills and sprinted back. She jumped on the rear of Hairzilla's treadmill, grabbed 2 full handfuls of hair and, with the full weight of the great state of Wyoming, yoinked her off the back of the treadmill and onto the floor. It was a mighty crash. Pieces of remote and blonde hair went everywhere. People were screaming. Babies were crying. Dogs were barking. Feels like I even remember an air raid siren. Suffice to say, it was a fiasco. Don't worry. Everyone broke them up before it got too bloody. But, damn, that was entertainingly intense while it lasted. I really thought this fiasco was going to be the start of World War III. But, weirdly, it wasn't. In fact, by the time all the batteries and little buttons from the remote had been picked up, it was just over. I never really heard much about it after that. Which, to this day, is the most surprising thing about what happened. Also surprising, those two didn't get kicked out of the gym. In fact, they didn't even miss the class. Honestly, I thought this was cool. For months I expected things to escalate between those two. It never did. Every single day they'd both show up to Lawrence's class, throw down a workout, and go their respectful, separate ways. Sometimes I'd even see them talking. Not like best friends or anything, just a little chat. I tell you what, there are things I don't miss about the 90s. It was a weird time full of too much flannel and angsty music, but people really knew how to resolve issues back then. They just let shit go. These days, everyone has a voice on every platform. Letting shit go just isn't common. I guess it doesn't make good content. The war against drag queens. On Thursday last week, Tennessee government bill signed into law a bill restricting adult cabaret performances in public spaces, which includes male or female impersonators who provide entertainment that appeals to a prurient interest. A bill banning gender-affirming healthcare for transgender youths in Tennessee was signed into law on the same day. On Monday, Tennessee passed another anti-drag bill, this one requiring adult cabaret performers to get a permit in order to perform. Lawmakers in 14 states including Arizona, North Dakota, Kentucky, and Texas have also proposed anti-drag and anti-trans laws with similar language. Seriously? We are in a recession. People are homeless. Americans go to sleep hungry and have no health care. And you idiots are wasting our time and money on this? Are you serious? We have bigger problems in this country that you need to fix. Where will we draw the line? We already lost the rights to our bodies, and now they are trying to push the LGBTQ community back into the closet. What's next? Should black people sit on the back of the bus again? Will it be okay to burn Jewish people? Where does it stop? We need to stand up for each other's rights, whether it affects you or not. Eventually, they will come for your rights, and who will be left to stand up for you? So today, my friends, remember everyone's rights are our rights, and we must be willing to stand up for everyone's rights. Otherwise, no one will have any rights left. We must speak out for injustice. We must vote out these people who are trying to bring us back into the dark ages by taking away the rights that the ones that came before us fought so hard to get. Everyone deserves equal rights because we live in America, the home of the free, for now. The lies we are teaching our children. Yesterday, I wrote about some states trying to ban drag queens, and now this. Are these politicians trying to take everyone's rights away? Sure as hell looks like it. A Florida textbook publisher removed all references of race from a lesson about civil rights icon Rosa Parks in order to get a Florida committee's approval, according to the New York Times. Parks helped spark the Montgomery bus boycott after she refused to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery, Ala, bus in 1955. The theory has become a major point of contention for Republicans, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who signed legislation last year that prohibits instruction that could make students feel responsibility, guilt, or anguish for what other members of their race did in the past. DeSantis' administration has taken this law and used it to reject more than 40 math textbooks for allegedly incorporating prohibited topics or unsolicited strategies, including critical race theory. This year, his administration banned an advanced placement African American Studies course from running in schools, accusing the College Board of indoctrination, not education. So seriously, we are now taking the truth out of our textbooks because we don't like the way it makes us look? Are we trying to erase all that we did? The execution of Native Americans, the Holocaust, the years of slavery, and the rights we took from black people. Like that's supposed to make things better. Our children need to know the horrors we did and the pain we caused to so many people. We can't just pretend it didn't happen. Otherwise, we are likely to repeat our mistakes. We need to teach our children the difference between right and wrong, and trying to pretend it never happened is definitely not doing this. The first thing in order to change is to admit you have a problem. We must admit our wrongdoings. When we know better, we do better. That is how we grow. So today, my friends, I tell you all the time, be the change you want to see. These are people you voted into office, whether you voted for them or by not voting at all because you think your vote doesn't count. We need to protest, run for office, and get out and vote. That is the only way change will happen. We must tell our children that we made mistakes in the past and that we are trying to do better, not by pretending it never happened. You want to see change? Then be the change you want to see. A 26-year-old female celebrated Sober October this year because I felt like I had been drinking irresponsibly, and my body and mind had rewarded me so greatly for this decision that I decided to attend a sobriety event just to possibly make new friends. At this time in my life, I decided I was going to just focus on my health and my personal growth. A relationship was not even in the question. I hadn't seriously dated for about 3 years and I had given up the idea of finding someone so that I could continue to focus on my goals for myself. I ended up connecting with a woman at this sobriety event and we talked for many hours. After parting ways around 1 a.m., I walked to the train and saw that it was delayed for around 30 yen mins. As I waited for the train, I noticed a handsome man on the platform and inched closer to him. I never planned on approaching him. I just wanted a better view while I waited, lol. Once the train arrived, it turned out to be a bit crowded, so he stood near the corner of the subway doors and I stood on the opposite corner, with us practically shoulder to shoulder. As the train started moving, I shuffled through my pockets for some time looking for my chapstick. I had so many things in my pocket that it felt like I had been digging around in there for an hour, and I ended up dropping my chapstick once I finally did find it. He picked it up and handed it to me and said, "Have a hole in your pocket?" with a friendly smile. I just smiled back. Once the seats cleared a bit, I sat down on the seat closest to where he stood. At the next stop, a homeless man entered the train and immediately began handing out compliments to everyone. I was the first person and he complimented my outfit and said I was beautiful. I politely thanked him and then he looked at this mystery man and then back at me and said, "Damn, you guys make a sexy couple." I blushed and smiled, which probably indicated to the homeless man that we didn't know each other. He then asked, "Wait, are you guys dating?" To which the mystery man replied, "Not yet." We ended up speaking to each other until he arrived at his stop and planned our first date that same night via Instagram. We've now been dating for a month and I think I've fallen in love. It sounds crazy to me still because he's better than I could have ever imagined any man to be. He's been taking such good care of me that I sometimes get scared that he just magically appeared into my life like this. I don't know what the future holds, but if I ever have the opportunity to marry this man, Lord knows I will. I was out in the kitchen making myself some French toast. It was around 11 p.m. at the time and I absolutely should not have been cooking at that hour, but I'm pregnant so I 100% didn't care. Everything was smelling good, nothing was burning, life was good. I then glance over to my Chihuahua. He's a puppy, so he's usually closely monitored by me or my husband. Something seemed off though. His head was bobbing up and down and his legs looked pretty much useless. At first, my heart skipped a beat as I thought of everything that could be potentially wrong with him. I went over and picked him up and tried to put him back on his legs, but he started whining and lied back down. This was my oh shit moment. I picked him up again, this time holding him upright, leaning him on my shoulder. By this point, I had Googled every possible thing I thought could be wrong with him, but nothing seemed to fit the description. I quickly walked over to my husband and tried to explain what was going on. He stared at me blankly and said, "I don't know." I ignored his response and put the puppy back on his bed. I went to grab him some food and water. Then sure enough he came running to me in the other room, waiting anxiously, acting as if he hadn't just collapsed every time I tried to stand him up. In my mind I was like, "Oh okay, I guess you are fine then." But of course out of nowhere he flopped down again. At this point I was freaking out and thinking, oh my god, my puppy is dying. What am I gonna do? I'm the worst person ever. How could I let this happen? I rushed back into the room holding him. I was on the verge of crying, whilst trying to explain that our puppy need to go to the emergency vet. But he abruptly interrupts me and mumbles, "Not gonna lie, about 30 minutes ago I caught him getting into one of my carts." I didn't think he ate that much, so I took it away and forgot about it. I was stunned. A cart is a vape for those who don't know. Dude, seriously. Why didn't you bring that up sooner? I then looked back over at our puppy. It all started to make sense. "Wow buddy, you are high as fuck, aren't you?" He flopped over on me, huffed, and went straight to sleep. So now I'm currently still sitting with him 3 hours later, making sure he's still breathing and doing okay. So far, so good. Just one totally stoned puppy, and one super worried pup mom eating her now burnt French toast.